Okay, so shall we start this? I am C.P. Surendran. I'm a writer and a poet. Now, one of the things I want to do with this session is that each of these persons, each of these poets, gets about 5 to 7 minutes, not more than 7 minutes. In one exceptional case, which is Shyam Sudhagar's case, he'll be reading a longish poem which won him an award. So that will be around 9 minutes. I won't take more than 5. But before I begin into a mechanical session where people read their poems, there's something which I want you to consider. It is about the idea of a poem. Yesterday, when I was coming in here, somebody sent me a small poem. That poem is actually written by Paul Celan. I don't know how many of you have heard of Paul Celan. Paul Celan is one of the most important European poets ever, right? So I'll take about 3 minutes, okay? And then I'll be going back, and I'm not reading my poems till the last. So Paul Celan's poems is the poem of disposition, right? What does that mean for us? So it's a very important thing to consider because all of us are poets trying to put our stuff out there, and you are astute readers and listeners, right? So the experience of a poem of Paul Celan is that words are fractured. Why are they fractured? The language is fractured. Why are they fractured? Because it comes from a state of disposition. For example, when he was born in Bukovina in Romania, that particular village was in the possession of Russians. Then it became moved over to the Germans. When he came out of prison, he did not know to which country his own village belonged to. The house was gone. His father was shot. His mother died of typhus in the concentration camps. And he, though a Jew, started writing in German towards, I think, the late 20s. And that was the language of the master, German. And towards the end, of course, he got married. He had an affair in between. And in the end, in 1970 or so, he committed suicide by jumping into the Seine. So the language of disposition is exactly what is missing in today's poetry. You know, that is a very drastic thing to say, but what I'm trying to figure out is that from the nature, the basic nature of poetry of disposition, we have come to a poetry actually of possession. And that is contributing to the crisis in poetry and writing in general. Because we also live in a rather prescriptive society, characters are dying out and characters are moving into the imaginary sphere. Earlier we had characters in real life, but because of the prescriptive form of behavior in society, which is fundamentally anti-art. Why is it anti-art? Because anti-experience. So we have a real crisis here. So I'll now begin calling the poets on the stage. We have some very fine poets here. And I think I begin with Rukaya. Who is Rukaya? Come on stage. Yeah. 5 to 7 minutes.
A warm good morning to all of you. First of all, I would like to thank the President, Sahitya Academy, Professor K. Sachidanandan, the Secretary, C.P. Abubakar, and all the organizers for having invited me here. It is indeed an honor to be here. Before going on to a reading of my poems, I would like to mention how the phenomena of diaspora has profoundly influenced me, probably because I have done my research in this area. And you find this theme recurring again and again in my poetry. And there's a popular misconception that diaspora deals only with displaced populations from the native soil to the foreign soil. But this is not true. There are actually 4 phases. And if this is actually true, then all of us are diasporic in different ways. Each person ejected from the mother's womb is diasporic, because he or she is displaced from his feminine side. This is why we tutor a boy right when he's 5 years old, saying that don't cry like a girl. or a girl is divorced from herself as she is forced to conform to a patriarchal society. We in India, we believe in the concept of Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam, and yet each married woman is in perpetual liminality. My first poem is about that. When I got married, they told me, now onwards you belong to your hubby's home. And when I went there, they always spoke of where I came from, flinging me into never-ending Cretan paradoxes of belonging. I am always going home and still waiting for the day when I'll be coming home. And as we have seen in movies like Great Indian Kitchen and in reality, when a woman gets her periods, the agent of cleanliness in the house, paradoxically, she turns into the source of pollution. And since periods is a taboo topic in our society, reading a poem itself on periods becomes an act of resistance. And as you see in the movie, the idea of being polluted is extended to the whole being and then to the whole woman race, as we find the Shabrimala issue juxtaposed in one of the scenes. And this poem is about a girl who gets periods for the first time and experiences a strong sense of dislocation because by mind she's still a child and physically suddenly she's a woman. It is that time of the month again when the life spills out of me and my body wins over my mind, when each woman is shoved aside like an oozing wound and a trophy for the likes of mankind, and I am made to feel guilty for someone else's wrong. All the perfumes of Arabia will not wash these hands of mine. A time when woman is deemed unholy and imprisoned in imminence. It all began once below a time when I found a huge stain on my white and white. And mom said, "You have become big. Now onwards play only with your cousin sisters." And when there was a discussion, they hushed me up saying I was little. I have still not reconciled with a girl given birth by a woman to this woman suddenly born of a girl. Next is a poem very close to my heart. If I may address the elephant in the room, it's not easy being a Muslim in today's India. So this poem is particularly dedicated to Fatima, a brilliant girl of IIT Chennai who committed suicide. As she had mentioned in a suicide note, that her identity, her name itself was a problem. Fatima, you are not alone. It is there everywhere. When a famous academic walks up to me and tells me he didn't expect a girl covering her head to ask him such questions. Or when a well-meaning friend asks me where I come from and I say Mogral, exclaims how her history professor husband told her I was actually Brahmin generations ago, before Tipu Sultan converted us, and that's where my fairness and intelligence comes from. Or when my son's teacher tells me, my son is good, in spite of being Muslim in a Hindu school, and I lift a dog ear in disbelief. My gray cells are not mine. My conduct is not mine. I cannot save my own skin. I would give up my land any day for my brother, Babri, for God is omnipresent. But when probabilities are weighed against certainty, I do have a problem. The dangerous ones tell me, you do not belong here. The more dangerous ones say, you are welcome here. Do you need to tell me I am welcome in my own home? How can I call mom stepmom when I know I came from her womb? What could be worse than be diaspora in one's own country? The next poem is about a divorce. This is not my personal story, but it's a divorce of India and Pakistan. When some children decided to go across the border, some children decided to stay back with the mother because they did not have to give a DNA test. And then there was the introduction of the CAA, the Citizenship Amendment Act. Once below a time, Ma and Pa divorced, borders crossed them, and we children stayed back. Stems were grafted, but wounds never healed. Trauma herself turned a refugee, never to return. But now, Ma, I am asked to prove I came from you. Though you married again, and my little brothers after never asked to explain. I was never planted, Ma, nor uprooted. I will never do a DNA test. Ma, has any child in the world ever needed a certificate to prove they came from their mom? Next, my next two poems are on Gaza. Of course, this needs no introduction. But one thing I would like to say is just before any kind of genocide, the first step by the perpetrators is dehumanizing a population. This was what happened in the 1941 Severity Order also, in the case of the Holocaust, where the Jews were called subhuman. And I would like to highlight two or three quotes by some Israeli ministers. No electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. Everything is closed. We are fighting human animals, and we are acting accordingly. Israeli cats, Israel foreign minister, they will not receive a drop of water or a single battery until they leave the world. Benjamin Netanyahu, this is a struggle between children of the light and children of darkness, between humanity and law of the jungle. And this is my poem in response to such a dehumanizing language. Gaza. What God discriminates between children of the light and children of the dark? What scripture preaches unholy practices in pursuit of a holy land? What state defends itself against babies? What people are refugees in their own homeland? Place them in an open-air prison, bombard them with white phosphorus and kinder bombs? Ask them to run and close all routes and then deny them food and water. Were the gas chambers kinder? The swastika revolves to a full circle, and bitten by the bystander effect, the world just watches. If this is what humans do, then I'm proud to be a human animal. My next poem is also about Palestine. This draws an analogy between the condition of Palestine and the predicament of a woman. A woman always creates home wherever she goes, and she attempts to make it a marriage of two minds. Whenever she attempts to do that, her individual space itself is taken away. But the point is, can you take her self-determination away? War is for equals, and so is love. Not when one side is already down. All was always unfair in love and war. Home was a place in my heart that you love-bombed, and now feelings have turned refugees in their own home, running haywire, awaiting death like power cuts. Palestina was a woman. Her heart promised a marriage, and her space taken away. Her consent, her choice, her voice, her. Please read that in German. And like a Palestinian, the moon is a watermelon today. She has now learned to bear a knife in her heart with elan, like a badge of honor. On this New Year night, she dies once again for what she stood for. Can you take that away from her? And now, to come to my last poem. This year, on New Year's Eve, we had the most disheartening images circulating on social media. We saw Vinesh Fogart returning her Khel Ratna Award, Arjuna Award, placing them on the pavement. And we had Sakshi Malik quit wrestling. Wrestling is now no longer a sport because only one side wins. And right from childhood, one thing I believed in was perhaps if men excelled in any department, probably that was in the department of physical strength. And when women finally enable themselves in that department, if this happens to them, then what is the plight of the other girls in the country? So this poem is termed Dangal. And another problem is with our obsolete laws is that when any kind of sexual harassment happens, only if some kind of penetration occurs is it designated or accepted as sexual harassment. So the next poem is Dangal. When we were young, we were asked to learn taekwondo, karate, wrestling to defend ourselves. And when we did, able-bodied women, you finally killed our spirit. It took Harvey Weinstein, 90 women, the Me Too movement, 5 years of trial, a push from the New York State governor to finally prove guilty. When my meaning of modesty fails to penetrate your patriarchal vocabulary, it's time to create new dictionaries or call us loud, selfish, indisciplined. Elsewhere, an athlete races against her own principles. When you fight for your rights, it's called legitimate. When I wrestle for my rights, it's called feminism. Thank you.
Thank you, Rukaya. Sabida Sachi.
A very good morning, everyone. I won't be speaking about my poetry, I'll just be reading my poetry. I'll start actually from a series. I have a habit of writing series of poems. This is, well, actually, after this series is the title of my book, Hereafter. The series is titled Travels in the Hereafter. And this series happened after a long travel in Egypt. It's a series of 6 poems. I'll read just one. Travels in the Hereafter. 3. The Queen Who Would Be King. Actually, here, maybe a little bit of background is needed here because there is a fantastic temple in Egypt, the temple of Hatshepsut. She was the only woman pharaoh in Egypt. And what's really striking is that, you're getting off the boat, you're on the Nile cruise, you get off the boat, you start walking towards her temple, and what you see are hundreds of gigantic statues. And these are the queen, Hatshepsut. But she has a beard. Yeah? Because in Egyptian, ancient Egyptian iconography, there was no way to represent actually a woman who ruled. So the beard actually represents her power. So this is the queen who would be king. At the doorways to the temple, a bearded woman guards the gods. Many bearded women, extravagant mysteries in stone, endure elegant and imposing, with disdain for the puzzled. O Hatshepsut, the queen who would be king, she of styluses and swords who styled herself thus, obeying the rules of the ruled in which only kings figured. Hatshepsut, you could not bend the adamant reality with your mythopoeic metal. Your name on the obelisks stays erased by the treacherous orders of the one who came after you. The one who could not bear without bristling with impotent anger and greed your queer attitude of command. Your unmaker, your husband's son. I'll read one more from that series. It's the last one in the series. Egypt, of course, is also the place of Najib Mahfouz, the great novelist. He had just passed away. When I went to Cairo, he had just passed away. You were not here for Najib Mahfouz. I looked for the children of the alley, scowling and scurrying in perilous lanes of shadows, for tremulous knives, stone stairways heady with slithering hookahs, and the eternal ring of glass on glass, lemon trees piquant and lyrical, the desert's inebriated moon, recklessly seeking the sharp edge of strife or the sheer veils of another's wife. But in this old city of sagas and fables, you, Mahfouz, older still, the chronicler of Cairo, were not here. The next poem that I'll read is called To Paul Celan. I have a habit of writing poems to other poets. To Paul Celan. Everyone over 40 should be shot dead, wrote a poet in 1969. The 50-something Jewish poet heard it in 1970 and resolved to drown himself in the Seine. The Seine flowed on 50, 30, 60, 40, 20. Sweet Seine, flow softly until I end my song. Sweet Seine, sing softly until my poem soars. Softly, still softly, candles flickered. Christ, Jehovah, Christ, Jehovah. Whether new or old, testaments will be testaments. A soldier kept counting the heads in some concentration camp. 60, 10, 30, 50, 70,021. And you, my later roses. Softly, still softly, flowers bloomed in the cemetery. Carl, Rosa, Paul. Be it genocide or suicide, death is death. In a rain of black umbrellas, the priest chanted, Amen. Outside, death. 50, 90, 40. Sweet Seine, flow softly until I end my song. Sweet Seine, sing loudly until my poem flares. Death, scattered candlelight, roses, roses. As a counter to, in conversation with this maybe, I'll read this poem, which I wrote just after the terror attacks in France in November 2015. It's called I was in London at the time. I had just returned from Paris. I missed the terror attacks by a few days. No, do not go there. No, do not go there. The pendulum of the basilica clock is a bomb that will go off the moment you step on the bell tower's hunchbacked staircase, winding its way to the sky, crisscrossed by drones over Beirut and Aleppo and Baghdad, cities of fevered fairy tale dreams, now but the cries of John the Baptist's head on a platter, dusted with the pain of the apostate and the infidel. No, do not go there. The refugee child's shoes, stained by the perilous salt water of the ocean she tried to cross, to find a home elsewhere where there is no war, as they play their war games only outside their borders, pressing the buttons of kill and burn and smash and bomb and kill till the war reluctantly comes to their cafes and a football match turns bloody and music stops playing the tunes of liberté, égalité. There was never fraternity in any case, not even a pretense to love your neighbor, but kill the joy of play and sport in the schools of Kabul and Gaza and Cairo and Jerusalem, where every supper could be the last, where every candle is lit for the dead, where every prayer is a cry of the living, where every string is tuned to a requiem, where every utterance is a protest, and the poetry of hikmet, of darwish, of fairs, of mir. Do not go there. I lighten things a bit by reading a comic poem. It's called In This Issue. Let me just find it. In This Issue, the 18-meter long romantic poem by the 47-year-old promising poet. The long-awaited 25-kilo novelette by the leading novelist with one foot in the grave. An interview with the auto rickshaw driver who plays a cameo in TV serials, driving the heroine to the hero's house, about the representational value of subalterns. A candid interview with the wife poet of the above-mentioned budding poet about his untamed creative processes. Digital poetry and market ploys, a few thought-provoking thoughts by the hot-selling Marxist thinker. The Weekend Book Reviewer presents languid and heavy-bottomed Latin American short stories in his usual arousing manner. Only 15 rupees for one issue, $20 for foreign subscribers. I'll actually end with, today is 30th January. It's the day that Gandhiji was assassinated. And I have a poem, this came recently in Poetry Wales. I have a poem this is partly on Gandhi, but it's on statues. Okay, so this poem is called Museum. And it's a prose poem. It's not a verse poem, but a prose poem. Museum. The maimed Salabhanjiga from Sindh, who guards the loot in the British Museum, proposed to the Queen from Mohenjo-daro, who stands with one arm on her defined hip in Delhi's National Museum. Let us go flying around the world and see what they're doing to statues these days. When the Queen arrives in England from Delhi, there lie the statues of slave owners in canals, in pieces. In South Africa, too, oppressors' statues have fallen. You remember there was the movement called Rhodes Must Fall that started in South Africa, in Cape Town, and then came to Oxford, where because Rhodes was a slave owner, so this is actually in the context of all the statues that have been falling. In South Africa, too, oppressors' statues have fallen, covered in graffiti. But what is this? Even the Gandhi of Durban stands unsteady with a wobbly stick. Outside the Parliament in London, the new Gandhi argues with Churchill. In India, the killers of Gandhi sit sculpted amidst flowers and saffron robos animated by hatred. Gandhi sat meditating on the wretched of the earth in Tavistock and in Rajghat, calm in his solitude. He opened his eyes, slowly stretched his legs that had walked the world, invited his guests to sit down on the floor with him in his bare ashram, and addressed them in a gentle voice. You women of the world must lead the way once more. What the world, cloven by wire fences, needs is deliverance from the vanity of men. You have been bathing and feeding and carrying this planet of ingrates on your shoulders. Come, may the globe become whole in your kind hands. Saying this, Gandhi disappeared into the kitchen. Can I read one last poem, which I just wrote like 3 days ago? It's a very short poem. It's called In Ayodhya Again. It's in the context of the Babri Masjid. I mean, it's not as if all my poetry is political. I also have a series to my father, which I intended to read one poem from, but that's all right. Those who wish to, actually, I do have a few copies of the book with me, probably. In Ayodhya Again. Again drowns Rama in the river Sarayu. Again lotuses bloom and spread as wounds. Again flutters in the last breath of Rajadharma the yellow flag speared on the masjid's forehead. Again the rising crescendo in Ayodhya. Ram Naam Satya Hai, Jai Shri Ram. Why search for me in the temple or the mosque? Right beside you am I, sings Kabir in the cremation ghat in Banaras. On the scarlet stain drawn by 3 bullets, again emerge 2 last words. Hey Ram. Remembering Gandhiji, I'll stop here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabita, for both Gandhi and Ceylon. At 11 o'clock, we have a 1-minute break on a silent prayer on Gandhi. That's 11 o'clock. Aditya, would you like to come on? Yeah. Aditya Shankar.
Good morning, all. First of all, thanks to ILFK for the opportunity. So I'll jump directly into reading poems and hope they'll explain themselves. The touch. The most memorable touch must be a handshake, or is it the motherly embrace of a tree and its nest? It could be a gentle brush of shoulders on a long-distance train, or the dance of rain with lonely grass blades. The finest touch could originate from the fingers of wisdom as you encounter lines that shape your being. It could very well be a pat on the back, the warmth of humanity condensed into a touch, or a smile that rose like a crescent in your sky. The finest touch could be the touch of hope that lingers, the dreamy touch of ice in the gallows, the gold scored by the hand of God, the saintly touch of Mother Teresa on the sorrows of Kolkata, or the defining touch of Gandhi on the Indian soul. Forgive me, I'm unable to choose between all the touches that I'm composed of. The next poem is The Stray Dog at the Junction. The Stray Dog at the Junction. A stray dog delves into the garbage heap, unconcerned by the accidental demise that occurs at the crossroads. It's easy to blame the stray for its indifference. One might ask, couldn't it pause its feasting, lift its gaze, and spare a moment for the departed? But ponder this, its realm of wisdom may be shaped by observing a line of ants that lost a foot soldier yet swiftly regrouped to march on with unwavering fervor. Among the ancestors of the dog's lineage, there may be a slave who witnessed a comrade's fall, yet pressed onward in fear of the master's lash. Unlike those who rush to an accident scene, or those who flee in haste, or those who gather in uncertainty, the dog remains focused on the karma of consumption, savoring it to the core, regardless of judgments cast upon it. Even in a stray resides an urban yogi. The next poem is The Bullet, a Reluctant Recruit. The sharpshooter isn't my friend, confesses the bullet. And hate-fed graveyards, not gardens, should shun our streets, it adds. It refuses to dwell within the realms of Gandhi, Pansare, Gauri Lankesh, Jessica, and kinfolk, to be that invisible intruder entangled in the inescapable web of historical spotlight, a tarnished throne of brand new sin, a projectile that seeks solace in the anonymity of a landfill, that longs to retire and fade away from memory. Left to itself, the bullet wishes to be misfired, to disappear into a wild tree's bark, to be a frozen stone awaiting a touch to break its curse, a native longing to dissolve into its elements. The next poem is Bare Within My Bathroom. Being bare within my bathroom differs from being unclothed upon a bed or in darkness. It's not the helpless nudity of the aging or the euphoric nudity of an inventor sprinting down the streets. With nothing to offer, conceal, declare, or shame, a nudity untouched by the pendulum swings of pleasure and sin. A nudity meant solely for oneself, not for a gaze or a looking glass, not for the lens of a magazine car shoot, not for an artist's canvas. This is how I yearn to face a creature in the untamed, to witness trust reflect in its naked eye. This is how the skin reclaims its umbilical cord to the earth, where insects and plants roll into a single dermis. May the republic of the bare break through locked doors. May garments speak in the third person narrative. The next poem is The Joy of Being a Football. The joy of being a football is a privilege of becoming a deity for forsaken souls, to traverse forbidden boundary walls, to rise anew from punctured bladders, a treasure sought by young scavengers. Amidst fields that turn into war zones, the joy of being a football is to relish two national anthems with equal fervor, to watch flags flutter with pride or burn in shame. In the eyes of those chasing you, embers of fear ignite, resembling the latent dread within valiant gladiators. As a bloodthirsty bull or a lethal bullet, they know that death lurks in your vicinity. They remember Escobar, they recall 2 half-times in hell. Among goalposts that switch allegiance each half, among television sets that transform into prayer candles around the game's sacred shrine, the ultimate joy of being a football is to roll for all. And the last one, The Tiniest Man on Earth. The tiniest man on earth, his stature tiny, felt estranged among humans and immense among microbes. To mushrooms that delight as a rain shelter for ants, he was a disappointment. Eliot's practical cats were too pragmatic to address his seclusion. Orwell's old major, consumed by his inspiring rebellion, left the tiny man's inquiries unanswered. He experienced happiness in greetings, embraces, and the smiling eyes of others. Yet, with no one to share it, his joy inflicted deeper pain than grief. He witnessed with great tension the wars of men from afar. Yet, with no one to connect with, his grief grew weightless, absurd. He wandered the solitary world, simultaneously melancholic and contented, a microcosm of the human sphere. Upon his epitaph, he inscribed, "Emotion seeks a watchful eye and lay in his grave, but death did not claim him. It wasn't keen on a body that couldn't distill into a portion of loss for those around it." Thank you.
Thank you, Aditya. The next reader would be Gopi. As far as possible, please stick to the time.
Thank you for this opportunity. I think it'll be, my name is Gopi Kotur, and I think it'll be in the fitness of things, because this is Chengambura Hall. I recently tried to do a translation of Ramanan, and so I will just, Ramanan, as you know, Chengambura's a great poem, was written for his friend Edappalli Raghavan Pilla, who committed suicide following jilted love. And this particular scene is in the pastoral poem is when the woman garlands the lover, and there is a cry from a bird in pain. And so he thinks that the future is going to be like that. I think Sachimastro has also written somewhere about this flower garland, which is a key factor in the whole poem. Actually, on that night, on the wedding night, when this lady marries a wealthy man, Changambura's friend, Idapalli Ravambilla, equally a famous poet, he commits suicide by hanging himself in his room wearing a jasmine garland. So that thread is there all over the story. So here, that small scene where, as I said, she marries him, in fact, in a pastoral vein. That's Ramanan. Chandrika, music that strings the veena of my mind. Love's magic maker, you have me transformed to some other. Fulfilled in a moment with you is my bliss one attains only in 1,000 births. So too the heart's sorrows that I must suffer in millenniums await me near. Seeing its face, I tremble. My beloved, the world is not a rose garden. Change, 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 changing change is what that takes the world forward. In that which changes, what transformation, what weird swirls cannot but happen. Think of it, helpless, just worms we humans are. Powerless to grapple with cruel fate, we plan one thing, but the outcome is something other. We cry over it, weeping in vain. Life is a riddle. Come to think of it, it is impossible to realize a satisfactory answer. This portends not a good future. I feel it thus deep inside. I know not why that drowned bird cry when upon my neck the garland fell and there arose the pang of grief. Were they not at the same time? For what reason, in thoughts of a future distressed, does my heartbeat time and again rise so? I hear deep within me a voice that augurs that this story must certainly end in bloodshed. The beginning is ill done, and in ill will must be its ending. Ramanan sits back again on the stone. Chandrika sits by his side, holding his hands together. Chandrika, lost and lost again in the future that is immersed in mist, murmuring with uncertainty from far away. Why let your heart suffer so, contemplating unknown sorrows? Embalm your heart in your flute song. Fill your mind with the bright colors of freshness. The bird was not portending ill. It was only signaling the arrival of night. To cuddle you in its arms awaits soft-hearted prosperity, when all the blessings of the world of song feast you with all-encompassing bliss, beloved. You have no cause in this least to be unsatisfied. Strive and be comforted for a heartbroken bubble as me. Dear one, why burden yourself with a fire mountain and burn yourself down to ashes? Strive and be comforted. This steadfast love that we treasure will rain on us happiness. Ramanan, stroking Chandrika on her back. Even as with pearly rays is the showering moon's flowering silver here, run your eyes there upon the misted hills where the forests teem. There in blinding cataract resounds the painful beating of those terror-stricken wings. My future is one that will too thus thicken with an unknown grief, even though I now laugh. Beloved, beyond compare, if my life sweetens with yours, this pitiless world will make of it a dust heap. The horrid vampire of society comes stampeding behind tender hearts in love. To escape from the fatal poison fleas of jealousy is but a wish turned weak. Whatever the transformation, let it be, I have enshrined you in the temple of my love forever. If I must burn down to ashes, let me, song of my desire, I will not forsake this love. I'm just stopping with that much. And then I'll just read one of my poems and I'll close this. This is a poem called Susie Teacher. I think it's coming in one of the issues of Indian literature. This is a poem about a teacher who taught me, and now she is totally demented, or she has got Alzheimer's. So this is a poem. Susie Teacher. It was dusk. I was sipping coffee, eating the cold bread mother had packed along with my books. There she was by the window, beautiful as she was always to me, her miniature breastpin upon her heave, gently silvering as the twilight hit it. The tiny Christ glowed all over. Red. Perhaps it was a rose or deer on her fabric that she was embroidering. The needle fell from her hands. Susie Teacher turned to me and smiled, gently rose, and was back with a magnet. In the small darkness that seeped by the hours, we searched all over the floor until the needle suddenly clutched its iron with a deliberate hug of quiescent eclipse. Just as now, her eyes strips across my face, foraging for me, as though I, her small needle, lay lost somewhere in hiding. A silver drop that she will never again find, turning me deeper than Christ in her eyes, as the bend in the twilight breaks the last colors of another evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Gopi. Shrikala?
Namaskaram. And thank you, Academy and President. And this is an honor for me. Thank you for giving me space in Kerala's great literary culture and poetry especially. I value it with all my heart, and thank you, fellow poets. And I made so many plans, but I keep changing. Nevertheless, in these times of great distractions and reconstructions, both in the religious realm, the built heritages, we can say, in the religious realm, and also in the so-called secular domains, I have a feeling that we must also start cherishing what was before there, the great natural environment, the great heritage of rivers and the environment, and that culture also has to be talked about. And some of these poems, so which I have selected today, have those resonances, those concerns and frustrations also, some hope. And also, while recognizing the citizenship rights and human rights also. The first poem is Beginning or the End. For centuries we were here, origin of rivers flowing like life, clad in paintings, naked like the earth. And we are here today, on this page, like yesterday, looking for us. What happened to us? Every time the same worries, absences, rejections, long silences. Yes, we are learned people still learning. In sufferings and struggles, we are strengthened. We become alive, smiling and touching. The heart of our dreams, smiles of our hope. Dreams leave us soon, like hope, they keep us waiting. You pick up the book, I'm wondering who wrote it. Certainly not me. Friends, are we here for a revolution? I see you walking with my loved ones, and we never walked together. There is no resolution. You are reciting the same poem over the years. The story of counting the names and we are not there. You are standing on the raised platform. Who are you? A leader, a teacher, a goddess, a schoolgirl, an actor in the formation, waiting for transformation? We are just an island. We are just an island stranded in the ocean, still moving round and round, and we come back to the same spot. We are just an island stranded in the ocean. We're still moving round and round, and we come back to the same spot. Is this the beginning or the end? The next poem is called I Close My Heart Down. The day you vanished again, I didn't realize that it would be this hard. Living among a population that boasts of its achievement of decimating women, I choose not to be a man, not a woman. The antique processions carrying the idols of sexual organs of humans, the modern spectacle of veiling the mind's eye, the tyranny of matrimonial parades, the art of chaining one's own legs, clinging on to the power of madness, unleashing the weapons of a medical war. This is no asylum, my friend. This is no asylum. This is no home of any kind. Where have you left me? The dream waters of flowers is all dried up. They don't carry a single strand of your fragrant hair. The horizons of life's last vistas have no portrait of your hard work. The cafeteria is closed down with no smell of the sweet cookies we had. Hunger, thirst, disease, and lies, the truckloads of arrivals of the season. I switch off the phone, which has no sound of your fondness. I close my heart down, which can't bear this forced imagination that has taken you away from me once again so ruthlessly. It's 11? Okay. And in Gandhiji's Smriti, I must recite a poem which in fact I wrote in memory of my uncle. അദ്ദേഹം ഒരു കിളകാരനായിരുന്നു, പറമ്പിൽ കിളയ്ക്കുന്ന ആളായിരുന്നു. അപ്പോൾ ഈ പറമ്പിൽ കിളച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുമ്പം when he works in the land, he sees the earthworms and he will go and pick the earthworm with his hand and keep it aside so that he doesn't kill it. And he was a slow worker, but a steady, attentive worker. And I used to watch as a kid, this was probably my first lessons in Ahimsa. And in Gandhiji's Smriti and in his honor, let me read this poem, A Monument for Earthworms. Where is the smell of earth, the movement of life on it? Farmers, friends you extinguish with bulldozers, I hear nothing but doom that terrorizes. And you call it progress, nothing but your killing machines rolls on helpless lives. Humans whom you turn into slaves of power, begging for votes for a share. I write my final adieu to your promise of tomorrow that just fills your pocket and throws the waste into hungry mouths. Mourn the mass murder of the earthworms if you dare. In your concrete circles, they resound a haunting cry, with no regard for any prophecy, no fancy for victory, no more yes ideology. In the silence of my heart today, I make a monument for the earthworms. Do you want me to read one or two more? Or one more poem? Okay. Love alone. They were trying to define beauty, truth, justice, strength, in all fairness and darkness. Let it be so. We stood high on the hill, bare in the balcony, gleaming in the green canopy, stumbling upon the flowers thrown on the ground, slipping down the edges, falling into the abyss until you came in the form of a memory, a gift, throbbing inside, moving the elephant hill that was unable to move, unable to fall in the hurricane, unable to see its own height in the falling rays of sunlight. I can now bend down to the earth, to the sands, to catch a breath of you, that smell of you, in a drop of water. They call it passion. Call it sustenance of spirit, instilled in me in the fading time, where there was none but you, the love of life, the promise of next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Srikala. Jayakrishnan, would you like to come? This is Jayakrishnan Valapura.
I'm reading some of my short poems here. I don't know whether there is any underlying pattern, but if you can find one, I'm very happy. Paparazzi. The vampire nails and red-tinged tongue licking the last drop of blood off the reticent subject. Vulture presences, a zoom flash on the neck that is sucked fast into the quicksand. Nosferatu, the vampire. Yes, he comes, day presences in coffins, tucked away in remote castles, bite marks on the back necks of pretty women, a rapid loss of blood. A rapid loss of blood at night, pallor, automatic abortions. Yes, he comes as a cat, a dog, a bat, a shining ball, a shade, a smell, a memory. Yes, he comes. Medusa. Oh no, do not gaze. The gaze is deadly. Snake eyes, stone curses, whirlpool inferno. Oh no, do not gaze. The gaze is deadly. One more poem. Demono. The demons in tales I have heard are all ravenous. They eat their prey raw and drink their blood by gallons. But mostly they are blind. And even children dupe them easily and escape from their foolish traps. Yes, children who break free from the castles and dungeons and come hurrying over the marshes and across the forests to the plains seeking liberation. Yes, the children, decoding the riddles, providing profound answers to little kissings. Yes, they are coming. They are coming into the present. Thank you.
Lovely poems, Jayakrishnan. Thank you. Ravi Shankar, would you like to come and present your poems?
Hello, I am Ravi Shankar, better known as Rash. I am from Palakkad, not far from here. I have 2 or 3 different kinds of poems to read. One is The Song of the Bridge. The Song of the Bridge. Voices from the river, ricochet of the old iron like a staccato of the passing girders. Passenger on the bank talks to the passenger in the train. I saw you briefly like a rushing pixel of the stream of dawn, a rainbow traveling down vestibules, unseeing me with loveless eyes, inconsiderate to the stationary me, insensitive to the flower that blossoms from my guts. A stranger, traveler in another dimension, beyond the pale of the conflicts, the armorless ambushes, the stray bullets of love, the blood seeping from gauze-covered, festering wounds. Goodbye, stranger from another world. Here I plunge into the river of Valhalla. Your fleeting image is long dead in my retina as the river below meets me headlong. That's one poem. The second one is The Man Who Stepped on a Mine. The man who stepped on a mine. The man who stepped on a mine finds the world suddenly quiet. All voices, chirps, roars, screams flow down his leg to the trigger. His wife and kids sit on his foot, his house, his street, his village, his mango tree, all sit on his foot, looking at him with apprehension. The world exists no more. Hills, dales, forest fragrances, animals pour, the sun. Exists no more. Play fields, soccer games, festivals, rain showers, library, and bars. The man who stepped on a mine grows old alone. His clothes fall off. He turns into a skeleton as the world changes. Only he and his mine rot as one. Early in the morning. It's a kind of prose poem. Early in the morning, there was no hiss of the water filling the tank. There was no hum from the washing machine. The cat did not mew or jump down from the attic. When the woman went out to sweep, a crow sat on a branch and watched her uncawing. Two squirrels sat on another branch unchirping. Two street dogs, who usually pay a visit for leftovers, sat on the compound wall unbarking. They looked at her sadly. The flowers all withered and dropped dead on the ground. Two newspapers lay dead near the front door. The mixie switched on with a loud wail and abruptly stopped. The gas burner spluttered in sorrow while boiling milk, but the cooker refused to whistle. The geyser refused to turn on in the bathroom. When the woman brought tea to the man, he was struggling to switch on the TV. On the grainy screen, anxious heads appeared one after the other, looking for the absent kid. The man's phone screen lit up with a single message. Where is she? Where is she? The message began to repeat itself in all languages. The dead line phone began to ring incessantly. Far away, a kid screamed, refusing to go to school. She sat down on a chair and started doodling the figures of an old man and woman. Huge tears sprang comically from their eyes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi. Aarti Ashok.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I once remember standing on the street along with other few women poets of Kerala, which is a group, and reading in English and feeling foreign. But I hope within these four walls, the language comes home. I'm just going to read my poems, and like Aditya said, I hope they speak for themselves. Words never tell. Her mother gives her a photograph and 120 postcards to write home. A postcard every week to be slipped into the red box from the city to the village far away. Words are a betrayal. They do not speak of how the night was a goddess with a tongue trickling blood, or of how the trees whispered wind, ink blue stars, and the rustle of a drunken lamp plowed sleepless nights. The city lights in her oceanic dreams, different from the hills, green skies. It opens fishes gutted with eyes glassed and dreams true of how a child went looking behind open doors for a grandmother left far behind in the village, whose long hair she stretched into the lonely roads lit by the city's skinless sun. This is another poet called Hope, poem called Hope. They found the poet dead at a tiny corner in East Delhi. Her body was upside down, as her head, non-linear, just as when she was alive. There was nothing on her face to show that men had walked that way, broken some glasses, set fire to houses, thrown stones at people, or had held in their hands long iron rods with which they scooped out children not yet born from their mother's womb. On one side of her cheek was a dark smear like a leaf, a flicker where fire kissed her tenderly. Her hair was black, raven dark of blood, clotted when it was banged, voices screeching, asking her over and over, Azadi? Is it Azadi you want? Take it. When she was turned over, a breast fell down, mauled, chopped, the leaf of her stomach gutted, gory, her thighs split open, bloody, all but her eyes. Her eyes were open, looking as it did into the butcher's eyes, as wide open as a sky. It was red. The streets, the roads, the town, the country, baptized by a poet's blood. The dead poet's blood, now running, seeding a revolution, recalling a country before it fell down on its knees. Dog days. On either side of the wall, a dog and she roomed, same walls, grey. Breath, moans, winter outside. No cherry blossoms, only red flowers wilting in the heat of the day and dying light. She hears the dog. It whimpers in the dark. The wall thin between them, a small sheet of pain. She hears the paws on the floor, hither, thither, thither, hither. She hears the unrest, her eyes growing out of the wall, and sees the dog. Night grows. The hardness of her cot betrays nothing. On either side of the wall, the dog and she. Both hear the other breathe, a water trickle in the sand, dried yellow butterfly wings. Both listen, both wait. Dawn steals sleep. Thank you.
Well read, Arti. Fine, sharp poems there. I think Shyam is going to read a poem. It's a pretty long poem, but it's an award-winning poem. It's a single poem. It'll be about 9 minutes, so brace for it. Shyam.
Title of this poem is Muziris, and it's an ancient port, as we all know, and now historians are again and again searching for it, where it is exactly. Muziris. There are 5 parts. First one. The one who knows the sea unlocks a sky in the heart. 2. The old town of the rough rains that you seek is dead. The alleys that once glittered with the spark of metals now reek of silence. Everything returns to its origin. Earthen pots to mud, water to the depths unraveled by the anger, coins to their luster. Nothing remains in the memory. No more jasmine scents, no more damsels. Roads are clogged by thrones. Weapons, like photographs of lightning, became mere showpieces. 3. When the afternoon sun becomes rooted in the earth and the trees doze off, stretching their fingers to Periyar, I remember a lost vessel that once sailed to my shores as natural as a mango falling into its own mud. With a kiss, God united us. Gazing at the night sky, we joined the stars. Together, we saw the edge of the sky boiling in the waves. At the doorstep of the sea, a town bloomed, stretching out 51 tongues. The glory of the sun has long drowned. Yet, the sound of the same sea and the faith in the same stars drip into memory. We parted ways in the drought after the flood, pretending nothing passed between us. Never committed love or time, shared dreams of the body, nor surrendered language. Yet, had you waited for me this long on the same deck, like a season nailed onto the wall of earth by some god, had you stood unmoving in the summer heat and salty winds echoing the same sea? Many have come later in search of me, animals, birds, fishes, a defeated king, corpses of toys that lost their child, long kisses of wind blown into the darkness, anchored stars waiting for their turn, the rain. Like lightning on the earth, time has shimmered through my bones, unknown by day and night. Water mountains blooming wild, shivering soil, the madness coursing through the flooded arteries of Periyar. I still jolt awake at those memories. 4. Did you confuse the mouth of the broken pot with bangles? Did you decipher the scribbling of the mad foreigner with a new language? Dear Mr. Historian, if you are done seducing tourists, please be seated to and listen to this song. As the king of the foreign deity decreed to build a temple mighty, with the same sweat and spirit that we set straight in merit, plowing sand, lifting stone and timber in mass, building walls, fitting solid doors in brass. The royal caste in a grand manner stood adored under the greed's banner. The lower caste stood step far aside, cowering at the eternal Dharma beside. Those spaces vacated by the untouchables, then claimed by the insatiable feudal men, parting and grating sea with roaring oars under the wrath that the summer sun pours. In the raging winds on the wooden vessel, the goddess sways in tune with the waves' whistle. Wearing the sacred sword and chilump chimming, the devotees utter the fucking song, dancing. The procession goes on with the mother god blessing. She sings down the navel of the land cursing. As an offering, once a Portuguese sailor sent a bell for the goddess in valor. Its resounding knell becomes the music of the world, and on it is written in the praise of his Lord, Sia Santimo Nome de Lavado. The bell's untold story. It's actually Portuguese, and there is a bell in Kodungalu temple where it is written. I mean, these lines are written. It's basically called as To Christ our Lord, and still that bell is there inside the temple. The bell's untold story remains in the temple. Why did you wipe off the memory of the stories of Persian merchants who waited on the shore for goods and spices? The farmer who was forced to sell his black tears for almost nothing. His skinny barren daughters who could never climb up high or flower. Once, a lean sailor came in from the sea. In his dreams blazed the vertebra of the sun, the brain of the sky. He left no footprints. Plowing the soil, he sowed his seeds, and from there grew tombs like masks on the earth. Hollow heart bloomed. The waterfall between two dreams dammed itself. The wings of the wild ducks drooped. Crows became the dead. The wild smile of a heart appeared in the mid-sky, the shivering skeleton of the sun. Several arcs came later, hunting wild stars. Many sailors, different seeds. I can hear the footsteps of those without footprints, thud, 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 thud sound, spreading down like lightning of the heart. Dreams, fears, reflections, excitements leave no footprints. When the palm leaves narrate history, as the stories of mere conquest, the sigh of a rotting harbor reflects a lightning smile in the dark. Buried in the earth lie several sculptures, Paditupattu songs, various news from Greece, Arabia, Persia, a Buddha's head wrapped in Chinese net, the chin of death in precious stones, cotton, food, weapons, Isis, Patini, Kannagi, the women who still guard the corpses of their husbands in lonely temple tunnels. The wives who turned to stone when the fire feasted upon the city, the steam of the vengeance rising from the ruins. A big drop of wrath covers the sky. The world ends with water and fire. Whose world has ended otherwise? Birth and death, the Alpha and Omega. Yet, a turtle with ashes in one eye and water in the other upholds our dreams. Its leg hold the weariness of centuries, the varied waters it has been through, the fallen faces innumerable. Pallibana Perumal, the crucified brought in by Hippolytus through the waters. Shankara, the eternal, Arya Shankara, rural deities who turned to sand and stone, Naga queens, languages feasted with smallpox, the barge that washed ashore, a refugee Jew, the farmer of black tears, the smile of death that escaped from the salty lips of drought, the thud, 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 thud sound of the last beat that dissolves in the wind with no footprints. 5. Like the song of death spreading in the burning cabins of the ship, the presence of sea unfurls in memory. Its voice crawl into me like the roots of a wild tree, creeping into a dead man's ear, like meeting one's own future in the desert. I burn in the rhythm of that voice. In the fall of my life, Time and wind tell me of Bilati ships landing in Kochari, crossing the invisible web of machines. The sea lashes hard against my heart, now covered in moss. The decayed roots of a giant tree that had once welcomed thousands of migratory wings lie spread on the soil. I can hear my name slipping into silence, my name like a huge turtle crawling into oblivion. In time, the wind has managed to slowly heal the old wounds. I leave myself open to new lashes. The fallen doors will open only to the sky. They focus only on sun and moon. I can hear the wind bursting past the waves, assertions and desertions. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you, Shyam. Anyone else left out from here? All right. Okay, I'm going to read a very small poem, a very small one. This is from my collected poems, which came some 5 years ago. This poem is on my father. My father was a writer, and he was a Malayalam writer, and towards the end of his life, he developed Alzheimer's. So, but he was a man of great willpower. So at one point, I actually found him practicing the alphabet of Malayalam language all over again, but he could not, of course, do it. Then I wrote a collection of poems called Katafalk. It's about 30 poems sequence. So this poem is from that collection. It's a very small poem, all right? And I won't take more than 5 minutes in any case anyway. Threshold. The roses are on their own. The grass spreads like water from an upturned urn. Between mornings smudged blue like bruises, and evenings bubbling like blood along the broken arteries of the sky, the road narrowing through hedgerows, hence fallow fields, darkening stream, slows towards home to halt at my father's feet, far from town. He clasps his hand over his head, the softening crown, and I see his hands are no longer hard or brown. So that is a short poem there, and what I'm going to do, I began this session with speaking about Paul Celan, a poet who actually lost everything, including his mother, father, language, village, his lover, and himself towards the end of his life, to his war psychosis. He was a war child. You must listen to Celan reading his poems. It's a great experience because he believes that nothing he says is really communicated. All right? So I'm going to read a very short poem by Celan, and then we'll discuss, if we have time, with the audience and the poets here. And as I told you in the beginning, these are fractured words, and I am not a great fan of fractured language, but you see how the most common words explain something which is kind of shattering kind of loneliness. This is called the bright stones. Stones pass through the air, the bright white, the light bringers. They don't want to come down, nor fall, nor hit. They open up like humble dog roses. That is how they open. They float toward you, my quiet one, you, my true one. I see you. You gather them with my every man's hands, and you put them into the bright again. no one has to weep for or name. See, what I'm going to say is that how the most common words like stone, my everyone's hands, weep, these are very small words. I mean, he was a German writer, and in the German language, there's more music to his words, but they're still fractured. So how is it that, this very commonplace words make sense and grief? Where is that coming from? A flower is a flower, but when he puts it, and picks that word from the whole bouquet of language and makes it stand there, why is it that conveying so much to you? I mean, it certainly conveys a lot to me. And I'm beginning to think that what he is trying to do, as I said earlier, is sharing his fantastic, humongous disposition. So a poem is not necessarily have to be political. It is not a question of, ideological or isms or causes or anything. A poet, if he's any good, is naturally dispossessed. He will be with the dispossessed people. But that doesn't mean that you stop being individualistic rather than being part of the herd. So here what he's doing is, with the wall stone, and he's talking about stone opening up like a dog rose. A dog rose is a creeping rose found in Europe. So I'm amazed that, this can happen, that, common words giving you this colossal human experience of, universal experience of disposition. So I'll stop it there so that, all of us can think if we have the time and inclination. And if you have questions to any of these poets or observations or comments, please go ahead. And the poets are also welcome. I'll read one more poem on public request, right? So there's a recent poem I wrote. It's called Invitation. It is to a friend called Sonu. It was a very close friend of mine. She's in the US now. So it's a very short poem again. Invitation. Put out with wine, the hearts hold purple fire and wait. Watch and absence thrive, white in the wild jasmine breaking out on vines. Come in April, when the house is on fire, or in June, when the lone boy up in the loft flings crushed rain against the window pane, or in November, when leaves chilled yellow by the light of a dead star tremble and fall, scattering bug-eyed ants. Come any time, really. The moon here is mortgaged to silence. Now that nothing can be said or done, perhaps you will consider staying on for coffee, son. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. And thank you. We have 10 distinguished speakers who have rendered their beautiful poems on this stage. And on behalf of the organizing committee, I thank each and every one of you.